I have with me now Douglas Gladstone, author of A Bitter Cup of Coffee, How Major League Baseball and the Players Association Threw 874 Retirees a Curve. Doug, I want to thank you for your time today. How you doing?
I'm doing very well, Mike. Thank you very much for the opportunity to come on the show and chat up the book and talk about the issues that the book raises. I appreciate it.
No problem, and I'll tell you what, I had no idea about this. Now, I've read about the NFL's issues with retirees, but when I came across your website and your book, you're the first, at least in my eyes, to bring attention to baseball and how they're leaving these 800-plus retirees out in the cold. So tell the audience, how is Major League Baseball and the Players Association doing this?
Well, first off, let me just tell you, you're right. There are very few members of the mainstream media who've tackled this issue in the last 3 decades. Why they've chosen to avoid it, I don't know. Maybe you can do a little investigative journalism and find out. The Pulitzer Prize winner of the New York Times, Dave Anderson, is one of the notable exceptions. Major League Baseball, to give you some context, and to give your listeners some context, the pension fund was established in 1947, and for 21 years, you needed 5 years to vest for a pension. It was changed in 1969 to 4 years, and then in 1980, the vesting requirement for health insurance, medical benefits, and an annuity was changed to, if you can believe it, 1 game for medical benefits and insurance, and 43 games, basically a quarter of a season, for your pension. And that's the way it's been since 1980. The problem is that in granting instant pension eligibility to everyone who has suited up since 1980, specifically May of 1980, the league and the union, for whatever the reason, they have not been inclined to retroactively amend the pension requirement for all those ball players who played from 47 to 79 who fell between the cracks. People like David Clyde, if your listeners and you can recall, the bonus baby who right out of high school, out of Winchester High in 1973, was the number 1 pick in the amateur draft. He finished his career. He had a respectable career in the show. He played for Texas and Cleveland, but he finished 37 days shy of the vesting requirement, of meeting and satisfying the vesting requirement. The gentleman who gave up the famous home run to Carlton Fisk in Game 6 of the 1975 World Series, the pitcher Pat Darcy, he's one of the men who's part of this 874. There were more than 874. According to my research, in February 2000, there were actually 1,400. In October of 2003, that number shrank to 1,053, and now it's 874. And you can do the math. We're losing a lot of these men at a high rate, and during a time, quite honestly, as your audience knows only too well, that the economy is really, it's been rebounding a little bit, but it certainly is not where most people would want to be. And the Major League Baseball Players Alumni Association sent out a letter to these 874 gentlemen, and the response rate was 73%.
Wow.
650 guys responded, and their tales of woe were dramatic. We're talking foreclosures. We're talking bankruptcies, leg operations, amputations, you name it. I don't want to, try and be histrionical and do a double hanky job, but their stories are very compelling, and you just have to wonder, why hasn't MLB seen fit to do the right thing. These contributions of the ball players who played from 47 to 79, they're part of the game. They're part of our national pastime. And a lot of the players feel that their contributions and their service credit have been rendered meaningless, have been rendered insignificant. Jimmy Hutto was a catcher, first baseman for the Philadelphia Phillies. He finished his career with the Baltimore Orioles, and he's got two daughters, who he says, when I pass, I want to leave something to my daughters, to these girls, that says I played in Major League Baseball, and I don't have anything to show for that time.
Right, and this is a big issue. Now, I know when they have 10 years of service, I was doing some poking around before we got on the air. I called an agent and spoke to him and wanted to hear, some of his thoughts on the topic. And I guess 10 years they get their full pension. And talk in terms of dollars, because remember, we don't have salary figures like we do today. You could go on the internet and see what every player's making pretty much. Guys like A-Rod, they're not going to need the pension system, although they're due the same pension as anyone else. These guys didn't make a lot of money. Some of them probably made, in some cases, a few $1,000s a year. What kind of money are we talking that they're losing out on a yearly basis?
A high comp player, and the pension plan is essentially, Mike, the pension plan is skewered to reflect service credit and salary. So a high comp player, for example, Tom Seaver, according to Baseball Almanac, finished his career with the Boston Red Sox and was earning $3.2 million a year. And he put in 21 years. It's almost certain that he is a high comp player, because I'm going to go out on a limb and suggest that Tom Seaver made more than $3.2 million during his glory years. You can finish at the zenith with $180,000 a year. $180,000 a year. These guys aren't asking for that. It would be nice, but most of these guys, Steve Grilly, who runs a bar in Syracuse, New York, he's a former relief pitcher for the Detroit Tigers. If the name rings a bell,
Jason's father, right?
Exactly, Jason Grilly's father. His first contract he signed for $19,500, not $3.2 million like Tom Seaver had at the tail end of his career. $19,500.
Wow.
Of course, the thing that I'm going to tell you right now is that, and I'm sure you know this, most economists will say, employers are not in the habit of vesting people who are not part of a plan. So if Major League Baseball, as the employer, wanted to do this, they're really under no legal obligation to do so. I just think it would be the nice, right, just thing to do. Especially, and I never like to interject race, but if you've done your research, and I know you have, because I used to listen to you when you anchored the show from Mantles on 57th Street, and I know you know the game.
The Negro League players you're going to bring up?
Exactly. Yes, I am.
Yep.
The veterans of the Negro Leagues in 1997, Major League Baseball did a great thing. The color of my skin, the color of your skin didn't automatically preclude us from playing baseball. In 1997, in part to commemorate the anniversary of Jackie Robinson breaking the color barrier, the Negro Leaguers, a handful of them, were awarded what they legally call charitable contributions of between $7,500 and $10,000 a year. Now, what's so disconcerting about this for the 874 ball players, and mind you, they're happy that the Negro Leaguers, the veterans of the Negro Leagues, is getting their money, because, like I said, baseball was mirroring the segregationist times that we were living in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, and a lot of